The dirt under Zara Baldwin's fingernails was a familiar stain, much like the bruises hidden beneath her threadbare dress as she stumbled across the vast Texas plains in the summer of 1876, cast out from the only home she had known for 15 years of marriage that had yielded no children. Blood trickled down her thigh from the fresh beating her husband had delivered before throwing her out. Barren women ain't worth the food they eat, he'd spat as the town of Tascosa, Texas watched her exile without protest. No one stood up for a woman who couldn't fulfill her duty to bear children. The merciless sun beat down as Zara collapsed beside a small creek, her throat parched and body aching. She cupped her hands to drink, catching sight of her reflection, a once pretty face now gaunt and marked with evidence of Samuel Baldwin's rage. At 32, she felt like an old woman, used up and discarded. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her heart seize with terror. Had Samuel changed his mind and decided to finish what he'd started? Scrambling behind a boulder, she held her breath as a rider approached the creek. The man dismounted with fluid grace, removing his hat to reveal sandy blonde hair that caught the sunlight. He led his horse to drink, whistling softly. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore simple trail clothes with twin Colt revolvers on his hips. When he crouched to fill his canteen, Zara shifted slightly, and a twig snapped beneath her skirt. His head jerked up, and in one swift movement, his hand went to his gun. "Who's there? Show yourself." Zara trembled, considering making a run for it, but her battered body wouldn't carry her far. "I ain't asking twice," the man called, his voice deep but not unkind. Taking a shaky breath, Zara stepped out, hands raised. "Please don't shoot. I mean no harm." The stranger's blue eyes widened at her appearance, dress torn, face bruised, dried blood on her legs. He slowly holstered his weapon. "Madam, are you all right?" A hysterical laugh bubbled up in Zara's throat. "Do I look all right to you, mister?" He studied her carefully, his expression softening. "No, madam, you surely don't. Name's Roy Vance. I don't mean to pry, but seems to me you might be in need of assistance." "I don't need charity," Zara responded automatically, the words Samuel had drilled into her over the years. Roy Vance's eyes narrowed as he took in her injuries more carefully. "That your husband's handiwork?" Zara stiffened, turning away. "It doesn't matter now. He cast me out. Said a barren woman has no place in his home or town." She expected disgust, or at least discomfort. Instead, Roy's jaw tightened in anger. "Some men don't deserve the name." He reached for his canteen. "Here, drink. You're looking mighty parched." Zara accepted it cautiously. "Why help me? You don't know me." "Don't need to know you to see you're worth more than that," Roy said simply, the words cutting through 15 years of Samuel's degradation like a knife. "No woman deserves to be beaten and abandoned for something she can't control." Tears sprung to Zara's eyes, the first she'd allowed herself in years. "I don't have anywhere to go." Roy considered her thoughtfully. "I've got a small ranch about 10 miles west. Nothing fancy, but I've got a spare room where you could rest up. My sister Eleanor used to stay there before she married and moved to Austin." He held up his hands. No strings attached, just offering shelter to someone who needs it. Suspicion warred with desperation in Zara's mind. Men didn't offer something for nothing in her experience. Yet death awaited her if she remained alone on the plains. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Roy shrugged. "My pa taught me to help folks in need. Way I see it, that's just being human." After a long pause, Zara nodded. "Just until I figure out where to go." "That's fair," Roy agreed, offering his hand to help her up. When she winced at his touch, his expression darkened. "How bad are you hurt?" "I'll live," she replied, the phrase as familiar as breathing. Roy helped her onto his horse, mounting behind her. "I'm no doctor, but my ma taught me a thing or two about healing. We'll get you fixed up." As they rode across the golden plains, Zara remained rigid, afraid to relax against the solid warmth of the man behind her. She'd trusted before, and that trust had been betrayed in the most brutal ways. "You got a name?" Roy asked after they'd ridden in silence for a while. "Zara," she answered, leaving off her married name. She wasn't Samuel's anymore. Zara Baldwin. "Well, Miss Zara, we'll be there before sundown. You can rest easy now." Rest easy. The concept was so foreign that Zara almost laughed again. Instead, exhaustion claimed her, and despite her best efforts, She found herself leaning back against Roy's chest, her eyes drifting close to the steady rhythm of hoofbeats. When she awoke, the landscape had changed. Rolling hills surrounded them, and ahead stood a modest but well-maintained ranch house with a barn and corral nearby. A few cattle grazed in the distance, and smoke rose from the chimney. "Welcome to Vance Ranch," Roy said as they approached. "It ain't much, but it's home." As they drew closer, a weathered man with a shock of white hair emerged from the barn. "Roy, didn't expect you back so soon. Did you?" He stopped short when he spotted Zara. "Well now, who might this be?" "Pa, this is Miss Zara Baldwin. She's in need of some help." Roy dismounted and carefully helped Zara down. "Miss Zara, this is my father, Harold Vance." The older man took one look at Zara's bruised face and nodded solemnly. "Any friend of Roy's is welcome here. Come on inside, my dear. My late wife's clothes are still in the spare room. Might be something that'll fit you." Zara was overwhelmed by their easy acceptance. "I don't want to impose." "Nonsense," Harold said firmly. "Roy, take her things to Eleanor's old room while I put on some coffee." "I don't have any things," Zara admitted quietly. Roy and Harold exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. "Well then," Harold said gently, "we'll just have to remedy that, won't we?" Inside, the ranch house was simple but homey, with handcrafted furniture and faded quilts that spoke of a woman's touch long gone. Harold led her to a small bedroom off the main living area. "My Martha passed 5 years ago," he explained, opening a trunk at the foot of the bed. "Never had the heart to get rid of her things. She was about your size, I reckon." He pulled out a faded blue dress. "You get cleaned up and changed. Bathroom's through there. Take your time." Left alone, Zara stood frozen, unable to believe her change in fortune. The small bedroom was more comfortable than anything she'd known in years. Samuel had insisted that comfort made women lazy. In the adjoining washroom, she found a copper tub and heated water already waiting. With trembling hands, she removed her torn dress, wincing at the sight of her body and the small mirror bruises in various stages of healing mapped her skin like a grotesque atlas. The warm water stung her open wounds but soothed her aching muscles. She scrubbed away the dirt and blood, wishing she could as easily wash away the memories. Martha Vance's lavender soap smelled of better times, of hope she'd long forgotten. After washing, she dressed in the blue gingham dress Harold had provided. It was simple but clean, and though slightly loose, far better than her ruined garment. She found a brush and attempted to tame her tangled auburn hair, pulling it back with a ribbon she found in a drawer. When she finally emerged, Roy and Harold were seated at the kitchen table, conversation stopping abruptly at her appearance. Self-consciousness flooded her as both men stood. "You look right pretty, Miss Zara," Harold said kindly. "Martha would be pleased to see her things being used again." Roy said nothing, but the appreciation in his eyes made Zara flush. It had been so long since a man had looked at her with anything but contempt. "Thank you for your kindness," she said softly. "I'll find a way to repay you." "Sit and eat," Harold instructed, placing a bowl of stew before her. "No talk of payment. We're just being neighborly." The stew was hearty and delicious, but Zara could only manage a few bites before her stomach, and used to proper food, protested. Roy noticed her discomfort. "Small bites," he advised quietly. "Your body needs time to adjust if you haven't been eating regular." The fact that he understood without her having to explain brought unexpected tears to her eyes. She blinked them away, focusing on her bowl. "So," Harold said after they'd eaten in companionable silence for a while, "where are you from, Miss Zara?" Zara hesitated, but these men had shown her nothing but kindness. "Tascosa. My husband, former husband, owns the general store there." Harold's eyebrows rose. "Samuel Baldwin? I've done business with him." His expression darkened. "Never did care for his manner. He cast me out," Zara said, staring at her plate. 15 years of marriage and no children to show for it. Said I was worthless." "Worthless?" Roy's voice was dangerously quiet. "He beat you and called you worthless for something beyond your control." Zara nodded, unable to meet his eyes. Harold cleared his throat. "Well, Miss Zara, you're welcome to stay here as long as you need. We've got plenty of room, and truth be told, this place could use a woman's touch again." "I can cook and clean," Zara offered quickly. "I'm good with a needle too." "No need to earn your keep just yet," Roy said gently. You need to heal first. Zara shook her head stubbornly. I won't be a burden. Accepting help ain't being a burden, Roy countered. It's letting folks do what's right. That night, lying in Eleanor's bed with clean sheets and a soft pillow, Zara stared at the ceiling, unable to process the day's events. Hours earlier, she'd been certain she would die alone in the Texas wilderness. Now she was clean, fed, and safe in a stranger's home. But for how long? Samuel had taught her that kindness always came with a price. Eventually, Roy and Harold would want something in return. Men always did. Yet as she drifted off to sleep, Roy's words echoed in her mind. You're worth more than that. For the first time in 15 years, Zara dared to consider the possibility that it might be true. Morning brought the unfamiliar sound of birds rather than Samuel's demands. Zara woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the comfortable bed and sunlight streaming through curtained windows. She dressed quickly in another of Martha's dresses, this one a soft brown that complemented her auburn hair. Her body still ached, but a night of proper rest had done wonders for her spirit. The smell of coffee and bacon drew her to the kitchen, where she found Harold at the stove. Good morning, Miss Zara. Sleep well. Better than I have in years, she admitted. Please, let me help with breakfast. Harold handed over the spatula without argument. Roy's out with the cattle. He'll be hungry when he returns. As Zara cooked, Harold sat at the table nursing his coffee. I hope you don't mind my saying so, but my boy seemed mighty taken with you. Zara nearly dropped the spatula. Mr. Vance, now. Harold held up a weathered hand. Just an observation. Roy's 34 and never shown much interest in settling down. His mother worried about that before she passed. I'm hardly in a position to think about such things, Zara said carefully. My husband may have cast me out, but in the eyes of God and the law, I'm still married. Harold's expression turned thoughtful. Laws can be changed, Miss Zara, and I reckon even the good Lord doesn't expect a woman to stay bound to a man who treats her worse than livestock. Before Zara could respond, the door opened and Roy entered, bringing the smell of horses and open air with him. He removed his hat, revealing tousled blonde hair damp with sweat. Morning, he greeted, eyes lingering on Zara. You're looking better today. Thank you, she replied, suddenly flustered by his direct gaze. I made breakfast. Smells wonderful. He washed up at the basin before joining them at the table. As they ate, Roy outlined the day ahead. Need to mend the north fence. Couple of calves got out yesterday. I could help, Zara offered. I'm stronger than I look. No doubt, Roy smiled. But those bruises need more time to heal. Besides, there's plenty to do around the house if you're set on being useful. Speaking of, Harold interjected, I'm heading into town for supplies. Anything particular you need, Miss Zara? Fear clutched at her heart. Tascosa? No, Harold assured her. The smaller settlement of Cooper's Creek. It's about an hour's ride east. Relief washed over her. Perhaps some thread? I noticed Mr. Roy's shirt needs mending. Roy looked down at his frayed cuff with surprise. Didn't even notice that. Women notice these things, Harold said with a wink that made Zara blush. After breakfast, Harold departed for town while Roy headed out to the north pasture. Left alone, Zara set about cleaning the already tidy house, finding comfort in the familiar routine. She discovered a basket of mending and settled on the front porch, needle flashing in the sunlight as she repaired shirts and socks. From her vantage point, she could see Roy in the distance, strong arms working as he repaired the fence. Unbidden, her mind wandered to Samuel. How different these two men were. Samuel had been handsome too, once, but his soul had been ugly from the start, something she'd been too young and naive to recognize at 17. By midday, the heat had become oppressive. Zara prepared a simple lunch of cold chicken and biscuits left over from breakfast, along with a jug of cool water from the well. Gathering her courage, she made her way across the pasture to where Roy worked. He straightened as she approached, wiping sweat from his brow. Miss Zara, you shouldn't be out in this heat. You need to eat, she replied simply, spreading a cloth on a flat rock and setting out the food. Roy eyed the meal with appreciation. This is mighty kind of you. It's the least I can do. She handed him a cup of water, careful that their fingers didn't touch. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Roy spoke. How are you feeling today? Truthfully, Zara considered the question. Better. Still sore, but safer. Good. Roy nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. You are safe here, you know. No one's going to hurt you again. You can't promise that, Zara said softly. Samuel has friends. If he learns where I am, let him come. Roy interrupted, a hard edge to his voice that hadn't been there before. Any man who'd raise his hand to a woman deserves whatever comes to him. The fierce protectiveness in his tone startled her. Why do you care what happens to me? You don't know me. Roy was quiet for a long moment. My sister, Eleanor, was married before. Her first husband was like your Samuel. Beat her regular. Blamed her for everything wrong in his life. His hands clenched into fists. By the time she found the courage to run, she was near dead. Took her years to trust again. Understanding dawned. That's why you helped me. Partly, Roy admitted. But also because when I saw you by that creek, something just... He paused, searching for words. Something told me I was supposed to find you. Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment, Zara felt a connection she'd never experienced before, not with Samuel, not with anyone. It terrified her. I should get back to the house, she said abruptly, gathering the dishes. Your father will be returning soon. Roy didn't try to stop her, but his eyes followed her retreat. Over the next 2 weeks, a routine developed at the Vance ranch. Zara cooked and kept house, her body healing a little more each day. Harold told stories of his late wife in the evenings, painting a picture of a strong, loving woman who'd helped build the ranch from nothing. Roy worked from dawn till dusk, always respectful of Zara's space, but watching her with an intensity that made her both nervous and exhilarated. On a warm Sunday morning, Harold announced he was attending church in Cooper's Creek. You're both welcome to join me, he offered. Zara hesitated. She hadn't set foot in a church since her wedding day, Samuel having declared it a waste of time. I'm not sure I'd be welcome. God welcomes everyone, Harold said gently, especially those who've suffered. I'll stay back, Roy decided. Got some bookkeeping to catch up on. Harold didn't press the issue, departing after breakfast in his Sunday best. Alone with Roy for the first time, Zara felt unaccountably nervous. She busied herself with dishes, aware of him at the table behind her, ledgers spread out before him. You don't have to hide in the kitchen, Roy said after a while. I won't bite. Zara turned, drying her hands on her apron. I'm not hiding. Roy's smile was gentle. Aren't you? You've been keeping your distance since you got here. Can't say I blame you, after what you've been through. His perceptiveness unsettled her. It's not personal. I know. He closed the ledger. Would you sit with me a spell? Just talk. Against her better judgment, Zara joined him at the table. What would you like to talk about? You, Roy said simply. Who is Zara Baldwin, besides a woman who can cook like an angel and mend like nobody's business? The question caught her off guard. No one had shown interest in her as a person in so long. I don't know anymore. Roy's expression softened. That's a start. Tell me who you were before Samuel, then. Zara stared at her hands. I grew up on a small farm outside of Austin. My pa died when I was 15, and Ma couldn't manage alone. Samuel came through looking to buy cattle. He was 25, established with his store in Tascosa. Seemed like a good match. And your ma agreed to this? She thought she was doing right by me. Samuel promised to care for both of us. Zara's throat tightened. Ma died of pneumonia 6 months after the wedding. Samuel said it was God's will. Roy's jaw clenched. And when did he start hitting you? After the first year, when I hadn't conceived. Zara's voice was barely above a whisper. At first, just slaps when I'd disappointed him. Then it got worse. Each month I didn't get with child, he'd get more violent. Said I was defective. There's nothing defective about you, Roy said firmly. Some couples just aren't blessed with children. Doesn't make either one less of a person. Tears pricked at Zara's eyes. I wanted children so badly. Not just to please Samuel, but because I love little ones. I thought something must be wrong with me, that I deserved his punishment. No one deserves that. Roy reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. No one. For the first time, Zara didn't pull away from his nearness. What about you? You're kind, hardworking, handsome. Why aren't you married with a passel of children? Roy leaned back, a shadow crossing his face. Came close once. Her name was Beatrice, daughter of a rancher over in Amarillo. We were engaged for 6 months. What happened? War happened. I joined up with the Confederacy in '63. Came home in '65 to find she'd married a Union officer who'd been stationed nearby. His smile was rueful. Can't say I blame her. War changes a man, and not always for the better. I'm sorry, Zara said softly. Roy shrugged. It was for the best. After that, just never seemed to find the right woman. Or maybe I wasn't looking hard enough. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities. Zara stood abruptly. I should start dinner. Your father will be hungry when he returns. That evening after Harold had gone to bed, Zara sat on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. The night was pleasantly cool, stars scattered across the vast Texas sky like diamonds on black velvet. The creak of the door announced Roy's presence before he spoke. Mind if I join you? Zara moved over on the bench. It's your porch. Roy chuckled, settling beside her with a respectable distance between them. Reckon it's as much yours as mine these days. You've brought life back to this place. I haven't done much, Zara demurred. You've done more than you know. Roy's voice was low in the darkness. Pa's smiling again. House hasn't been this clean or the food this good since Ma passed. I enjoy being useful. Is that all you want? To be useful? There was something in Roy's tone that made Zara's heart quicken. What else is there for a woman like me? A woman like you? Roy turned to face her. You mean a strong woman who survived hell and still has kindness in her heart? A beautiful woman with gentle hands and courage most men would envy. Stop, Zara whispered, overwhelmed by his words. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, Zara. It was the first time he'd used her name without the formal miss, and the intimacy of it sent a shiver through her. I've watched you these past weeks. Seen how you flinch when someone moves too quick, how you make yourself small when you think you're in the way. And I've seen how, despite everything, you still find beauty in the world. Roy, please. Tears threatened again. I'm broken. I'm still another man's wife. I can't give you what you deserve. You're not broken, Roy said fiercely. Bent, maybe. Scarred, certainly. But not broken. And as for being another man's wife, a man forfeits his rights when he casts his wife out like garbage. The law doesn't see it that way. Then the law is wrong. Roy stood, pacing the porch. I'm not asking for anything, Zara. I just want you to know that you have choices now. You can stay here as long as you want, no strings attached. And if someday you decide you want more, well, I'll be here. With that, he returned to the house, leaving Zara alone with her tumultuous thoughts. The next morning, Harold announced at breakfast that he needed to make a trip to Fort Worth for a cattle auction. I'll be gone 3, maybe 4 days, he explained. Roy, you'll need to manage things here. Zara tried to hide her panic at the thought of being alone with Roy, not because she feared him, but because she feared her own growing feelings. We'll be fine, Pa, Roy assured him, seemingly oblivious to Zara's discomfort. After Harold's departure, Roy approached Zara as she kneaded bread dough with more force than necessary. I've got to ride the south pasture today. Would you like to come? Might do you good to get out of the house. Surprised by the invitation, Zara hesitated. I don't know how to ride. We can share a horse, Roy suggested. Unless that would make you uncomfortable. It would, but not for the reasons he might think. Let me finish this bread first. An hour later, Zara found herself perched in front of Roy on his stallion, Thunderbolt, his arms around her to hold the reins. The intimacy of the position made her acutely aware of his body solid and warm against her back. They rode across the rolling grassland, the summer sun warm but not oppressive. Roy pointed out landmarks and shared stories of growing up on the ranch. For the first time in years, Zara felt a sense of freedom, of possibilities stretching before her like the endless Texas horizon. At noon, they stopped beside a small pond shaded by cottonwood trees. Roy spread a blanket he'd brought and laid out a simple picnic of bread, cheese, and dried fruit. It's beautiful here, Zara observed, watching dragonflies skim the water's surface. One of my favorite spots on the ranch, Roy agreed. Used to come here as a boy when I needed thinking time. And what do you think about now? Zara asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Roy's eyes met hers steadily. Lately? Mostly you. The honesty of his answer stole her breath. Roy, I know. He held up his hands. I'm not pushing, just being truthful. They ate in silence for a while before Roy spoke again. Can I ask you something personal? Zara nodded cautiously. Do you think you could ever trust a man again? Not me specifically, just any man. It was a question Zara had asked herself many times since arriving at the ranch. I don't know, she answered honestly. Sometimes I think not. But then, Roy prompted when she fell silent. Then I see how you are with your father. How you treat your horses. How you've never once made me feel afraid or indebted. She looked down at her hands. And I think maybe some men are different. Roy's smile was gentle. Some men are? Not enough, maybe, but some. When they returned to the ranch, the air between them had changed a new awareness, a tentative connection that both thrilled and terrified Zara. That night, a violent thunderstorm rolled across the plains. Zara lay awake, listening to the crash of thunder and watching lightning illuminate her room in brief, brilliant flashes. Samuel had always been at his most dangerous during storms, his temper seeming to feed off nature's fury. A particularly loud thunderclap made her jump, and without thinking, she left her bed, wrapping a shawl around her nightdress. She padded barefoot to the kitchen, intending to make tea to calm her nerves. She found Roy already there, stoking the stove. He looked up, surprise evident on his face. Can't sleep? Zara clutched her shawl tighter. The storm, understanding dawned in his eyes. Bad memories? She nodded, not trusting her voice. I was making coffee, Roy said. But I can brew tea if you'd prefer. Coffee is fine. Zara sat at the table, jumping as another thunderclap shook the house. Roy worked quietly, placing a steaming cup before her minutes later. It'll pass soon, he said, though whether he meant the storm or her fear wasn't clear. I used to love storms as a child, Zara murmured. The power of them, the way they cleaned the air. And now they remind me of him. The unpredictability, the violence. Roy's hand curled into a fist on the table. If I ever meet Samuel Baldwin. Don't, Zara pleaded. He's not worth it. You are, Roy said simply. Those words again, you're worth more than that. So different from what Samuel had drilled into her for 15 years. Lightning flashed, illuminating Roy's face, strong jaw, kind eyes, a small scar near his left eyebrow. In that instant, Zara realized she wanted to know the story behind that scar, wanted to know everything about this man who had rescued her in more ways than one. Tell me about your scar, she said impulsively. Roy touched it reflexively, surprise giving way to a smile. Horse kicked me when I was 12. My own fault. Approached him from behind after Pa had warned me not to. Does it hurt still? Nah, just a reminder to listen to folks who know better than I do. As the storm raged outside, they really talked. Roy told her about his dreams for the ranch, his worry for his aging father, his memories of his mother. Zara shared stories of her childhood, of the brief happiness before her father's death, of her love for cooking and sewing. Neither noticed the storm subsiding or the hours passing until the first gray light of dawn crept through the windows. We've talked the night away, Zara realized with surprise. Best night I've had in years, Roy said, his gaze warming her more thoroughly than the coffee had. For a breathless moment, Zara thought he might lean across the table and kiss her. Part of her, a part she'd thought long dead, wanted him to. Instead, Roy stood and collected their cups. You should try to get some sleep before breakfast. I can manage on my own this morning. Disappointment mingled with relief as Zara returned to her room. She'd never spoken so openly with anyone, not even her mother. Something was happening between her and Roy, something both wonderful and frightening. As she drifted off to sleep, Zara realized that for the first time in 15 years, she was imagining a future not just surviving, but living. Harold returned 4 days later, bringing news that made Zara's blood run cold. Ran into a fellow from Tascosa at the auction, he mentioned casually over dinner. Man named Jenkins. Owns the saloon there, if I recall correctly. Zara's fork clattered against her plate. Did he mention anything about Samuel? Harold's expression turned grave. As a matter of fact, he did. Seems Baldwin's been telling folks his wife ran off with another man. Has a reward out for information on your whereabouts. A reward? Roy's voice was dangerously quiet. $500, Harold confirmed. Quite a sum. Panic seized Zara's chest. Did this Jenkins recognize my name? I didn't mention you by name, Harold assured her. Just said I'd heard about a woman being mistreated in Tascosa. He didn't make any connection. He'll find me, Zara whispered, fear making her voice tremble. Samuel doesn't let go of what he considers his property. You're not property, Roy said firmly. And he won't find you. Even if he did, he'd have to go through me first. And me, Harold added. We protect our own on this ranch. Their own. The words warmed Zara, even as fear chilled her. In just a month, she had come to think of the Vance ranch as home, of Roy and Harold as family. The realization both comforted and terrified her. That night, unable to sleep, Zara slipped outside to the porch. The moon was full, bathing the ranch in silver light. In the distance, a coyote called, the sound lonely and haunting. The door opened behind her, and Roy stepped out, a blanket in his hands. Thought you might be cold, he said, draping it around her shoulders. Thank you. She pulled it tight, grateful for his thoughtfulness. Roy leaned against the porch railing, his profile strong in the moonlight. You're worried about Baldwin. It wasn't a question, but Zara answered anyway. Yes. He won't stop looking. He can't bear to be made a fool of, and that's what he'll think I've done. You know you're safe here. Am I? What if someone from Cooper's Creek recognizes me? What if they tell someone from Tascosa? $500 would tempt many people. Roy was quiet for a long moment. There might be a solution. It's not perfect, but it would offer you protection under the law. Zara turned to him, confused. What do you mean? Divorce, Roy said simply. It's possible in Texas, especially in cases of cruelty. It would legally free you from Baldwin. Hope flared briefly, then dimmed. It would take time, money for a lawyer, and Samuel would fight it not because he wants me back, but because his pride wouldn't allow it. I have money, Roy said quietly, and connections in Austin. A friend from the war practices law there. He owes me a favor. Why would you do that for me? Zara asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Roy turned to face her fully. You know why. The air between them crackled with unspoken feelings. Zara took a step toward him, then another, until they stood mere inches apart. I'm afraid, she whispered. Of Baldwin. Of this. She gestured between them. Of feeling again. Of trusting and being wrong. Roy reached up slowly, telegraphing his movements, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. I'm afraid too. You? She couldn't hide her surprise. Afraid of pushing too hard, too fast. Afraid of not being what you need. His fingers lingered near her cheek. Afraid of how much I've come to care for you in such a short time. Zara closed her eyes, leaning slightly into his touch. I've never felt this way before. Not with Samuel, not with anyone. Is that good or bad? Roy's voice was a low rumble in the night. I don't know yet. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze directly. But I'd like to find out. Roy's smile was slow and warm. I can work with that. He didn't kiss her, didn't push for more, and Zara was grateful. She wasn't ready yet, wasn't sure if she'd ever be ready. But for the first time, she was willing to consider the possibility. 2 days later, Roy rode to Austin with a letter to his lawyer friend, explaining Zara's situation and inquiring about divorce proceedings. Harold kept her company, teaching her to play checkers and telling stories of Roy as a boy. He was always the defender, Harold recalled fondly. Always standing up for the underdog. Got his nose broken 3 times before he was 15, jumping into fights that weren't his. That doesn't surprise me. Zara smiled, moving her checker piece. Harold captured it with a triumphant, king me, before continuing. He gets that from his mother. Martha couldn't abide injustice. Woman once marched right into the sheriff's office in Cooper's Creek when she heard he'd been rough with a Mexican family passing through. Read him the riot act right there in front of everyone. Zara tried to imagine having that kind of courage. She sounds remarkable. She was. Harold's eyes turned wistful. You remind me of her sometimes. Got the same quiet strength. Zara blushed at the compliment. I don't feel very strong most days. Strength isn't about not being afraid, Harold said wisely. It's about going on despite the fear. You've been doing that since the day Roy brought you here. Before Zara could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats brought them both to attention. It was too soon for Roy to have returned from Austin. Harold moved to the window, his expression hardening. Riders coming. 3 men. He reached for his shotgun hanging over the fireplace. Stay inside, Zara. Fear clutched at Zara's heart. Is it? Do you think it's Samuel? Can't tell yet. Harold checked the shotgun's load. But we're not taking chances. Zara peered out the window as the riders approached. Relief flooded her when she didn't recognize any of them, followed quickly by renewed fear. Unknown men could be just as dangerous. Harold stepped onto the porch, shotgun at his side, but visible. "Afternoon, gentlemen. Something I can help you with." The lead rider, a weathered man with a drooping mustache, tipped his hat. "Afternoon. Name's Morgan, U.S. Marshal's Office. Looking for a woman named Zara Baldwin." Zara's knees nearly buckled. A marshal? Had Samuel involved the law? "Don't know anyone by that name," Harold said evenly. "What's your business with her?" Marshal Morgan dismounted, the other two men remaining on horseback. "Her husband in Tascosa reported her missing. Says she was abducted, offering a substantial reward for her return." "Abducted?" Harold's voice dripped with skepticism. "And what makes him think that?" "Claims she'd never leave voluntarily. Says she's simple-minded, needs looking after." The marshal's eyes narrowed slightly. "You sure you haven't seen her?" "Auburn hair, green eyes, about 30 years of age." Before Harold could answer, Zara stepped onto the porch. She couldn't let Harold lie to a federal marshal on her behalf. "I'm Zara Baldwin," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "And I wasn't abducted. I fled for my life after my husband beat me and cast me out for being barren." The marshal studied her carefully, taking in the fading bruises still visible on her face. "That's so?" "Yes, sir." Zara lifted her chin. "Mr. Vance and his son found me nearly dead by a creek and offered me shelter. They saved my life." One of the other men spoke up. "Baldwin's offering $500 for her return. That's a mighty tempting sum." "Not tempting enough to send a woman back to a man who beats her," Harold growled, raising his shotgun slightly. The marshal held up a hand toward his companion. "Easy now. No one's taking anyone anywhere against their will." He turned back to Zara. "Madam, your husband is making some serious accusations. Says you stole from him before you left." "That's a lie," Zara said firmly. "I took nothing but the clothes on my back, which he tore half off me during his last beating." Marshal Morgan's expression softened slightly. "I believe you, Mrs. Baldwin. Seen too many women in your situation." He sighed heavily. "But I'm afraid I can't simply ride away. Your husband has filed a legal complaint. Without proof of his mistreatment, it's your word against his." "So you're going to force me to return?" Zara's voice trembled despite her efforts to remain strong. "I didn't say that." The marshal scratched his beard thoughtfully. "There might be another way. If you were to file for divorce on grounds of cruelty, it would create a legal barrier to his claims. Roy, Mr. Vance's son, has already gone to Austin to consult a lawyer about that very thing," Zara explained. "Has he now?" The marshal exchanged a look with Harold that Zara couldn't interpret. "Well, that's fortunate timing. In the meantime, I need to file a report saying I found you alive and well. You'll tell Samuel where I am." Panic edged Zara's voice. "I'll report that you're safe and pursuing legal separation," the marshal clarified. "I don't have to disclose your exact whereabouts." He glanced at Harold. "Though I reckon Baldwin will figure it out eventually." "Let him try something," Harold muttered darkly. The marshal nodded. "I'll need to speak with your son when he returns, get his statement about finding Mrs. Baldwin." "When do you expect him?" "Tomorrow or the day after," Harold answered. "You're welcome to wait in town. Cooper's Creek has a decent hotel." "Much obliged." The marshal tipped his hat to Zara. "Madam, I'll do what I can to help, but you should know men like your husband rarely give up easily. Be on your guard." After the lawman departed, Zara collapsed into a chair, trembling. "He's going to come for me." Harold placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "And we'll be ready if he does. Roy and I won't let anything happen to you, Zara." "I can't put you in danger," she protested. "Samuel is. He's dangerous when crossed." "So am I," Harold said simply. That night, Zara barely slept, jumping at every sound. By dawn, she had made a decision. She couldn't stay and risk harm coming to the Vances. They had shown her kindness and given her hope, and she wouldn't repay that by bringing violence to their door. She would leave before Roy returned, go somewhere far away where Samuel couldn't find her, where the Vances wouldn't be in danger because of her. With a heavy heart, Zara packed a small bundle of clothing and wrote a note thanking Harold and Roy for their kindness, but explaining why she had to go. She left it on the kitchen table where they would find it. Just before sunrise, she slipped out, intending to walk to Cooper's Creek and catch the eastbound stage. She had saved a few dollars from the money Harold had insisted on paying her for her work around the ranch, enough for a ticket to somewhere new. She had barely reached the end of the ranch's long drive when she heard hoofbeats approaching rapidly from the direction of Cooper's Creek. Diving behind a large boulder, Zara held her breath as the rider thundered past. It was Roy, returning earlier than expected, his horse lathered from hard riding. He didn't see her in the dim pre-dawn light, continuing toward the ranch house with urgency. Zara hesitated. Something was wrong. Roy wouldn't ride his horse that hard without reason. Concern overrode her resolve to leave, and she turned back toward the house. As she approached, she heard raised voices, Roy and Harold, arguing heatedly. "Can't just let her go, Pa," Roy was saying as Zara reached the porch. "It's her choice, son," Harold replied. "We can't force her to stay." "But Baldwin, I'm still here," Zara interrupted, stepping into view. "I was leaving, but I heard you riding in like the devil himself was chasing you." Roy's expression transformed from anger to relief in an instant. "Zara." He moved toward her, stopping just short of embracing her. "Thank God. I thought I'd lost." He caught himself. "I thought you'd gone." "I was going to," she admitted. "After the marshal's visit yesterday, I realized I'm putting you both in danger by staying." "Is that what you think?" Roy looked pained. "Zara, don't you understand yet? He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I rode all night from Austin because I got word that Baldwin himself was on his way here. With men." Fear clutched at Zara's heart. "Here? How did he know?" "Someone in Cooper's Creek must have talked," Harold surmised grimly. $500 loosens a lot of tongues. "When?" Zara whispered. "Today, according to my source." Roy's eyes never left her face. "Zara, I need you to go with Pa. He'll take you to the Johnsons' place about 20 miles north. They're good people. They'll hide you." "And you?" She already knew the answer, could see it in the determined set of his jaw. "I'll deal with Baldwin." "No." Zara shook her head vehemently. "I won't have you hurt because of me. I should never have stayed. I should have kept running that first day." Roy stepped closer, his gaze intense. "And I would have followed you then, just as I would follow you now. Don't you understand, Zara? You're not a burden to be shouldered. You're not an obligation. You're—" He trailed off, searching her face. "I'm what?" she whispered. Instead of answering, Roy closed the distance between them and kissed her. It was gentle but firm, a statement of intent rather than passion. When he pulled back, his eyes were questioning, giving her the chance to retreat. Zara didn't move, stunned by the rush of emotions his kiss had awakened. Not fear or revulsion, as she might have expected after years of Samuel's cruel touches, but warmth and an aching tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "You're everything," Roy said simply. "Everything I never knew I wanted until you appeared by that creek." Harold cleared his throat. "Touching as this is, we have more pressing matters. Baldwin could be here any time." Reality crashed back, and Zara straightened. "I won't run," she decided. "I've been running and hiding from Samuel for too long. This ends today one way or another." "Zara," Roy began to protest. "No," she cut him off firmly. "This is my fight. I appreciate everything you've both done, but I need to face him. If I keep running, I'll never be free." Roy and Harold exchanged a long look. Finally, Roy nodded. "All right, but you won't face him alone. That's non-negotiable." Harold moved to the window, peering out at the road. "We should prepare. If Baldwin's bringing men, we're outnumbered." "The marshal's still in Cooper's Creek," Roy reminded him. "I passed the hotel on my way through. Saw his horse outside. Can we get word to him?" Zara asked. Roy considered this. "It's risky. If Baldwin's already on the road, we'd risk running right into him." "We don't need to," Harold said suddenly. "Martha's old signal mirror. Remember, Roy? She used to signal the Johnsons when visitors were coming." Roy's face lit up. "The reflecting glass. Pa, you're brilliant. From the roof, we could catch the sun just right. The marshal's deputy would see it from town." "What does it mean?" Zara asked, confused. "It's an old system from when renegade Comanche were still a threat," Harold explained. 3 quick flashes means trouble. The Johnsons will see it too and send someone to Cooper's Creek for help." While Harold retrieved the signal mirror, Roy took Zara's hands in his. "Are you sure about this? There's still time for you to get away safely." Zara squeezed his hands. "I'm sure. Whatever happens, I'm through letting Samuel control my life through fear." Something shifted in Roy's expression, pride, admiration, and something deeper that made Zara's heart race. "You are the bravest woman I've ever known," Zara Baldwin. Not brave, she corrected him. Just tired of being afraid. Roy climbed to the roof with the signal mirror while Zara and Harold gathered what weapons they had: Harold's shotgun, Roy's Colts, and an old hunting rifle that had belonged to Roy's grandfather. Can you shoot? Harold asked Zara. Pa taught me the basics, she answered. Though it's been years. Harold handed her the hunting rifle. It's simple. Point and pull the trigger. Just in case. Just in case. The words hung heavily in the air. Roy returned from the roof, expression grim. Signal sent. Now we wait. They didn't wait long. Within an hour, the sound of multiple horses approaching set them all on edge. Roy peered out the window, his face hardening. Baldwin? Harold asked. Roy nodded. And 4 others. Arm. Zara's hands trembled, but she steadied them with effort. Let me speak to him first. Zara, Roy began to protest. Please. I need to do this. If there's any chance of resolving this without violence, I have to try. After a moment's hesitation, Roy nodded. But at the first sign of trouble, you come back inside. Promise me. I promise. The riders stopped in the yard. Zara recognized Samuel immediately, tall and imposing with his black beard and cold eyes. The years had not been kind to him. He had grown heavier, his face more florid, but the cruelty in his expression was unchanged. Baldwin, he called out. I know you're harboring my wife. Send her out now, and maybe I won't burn this place to the ground. Zara took a deep breath and stepped onto the porch, rifle hidden just inside the door. I'm here, Samuel. Samuel's eyes narrowed as he studied her. Well, look at you. All cleaned up and playing house with another man. You always were a whore at heart. Zara flinched but held her ground. I'm not your wife anymore, Samuel. You cast me out. You beat me and left me to die. You're my property until I say otherwise, Samuel snarled. Now get on this horse. We're going home. This is my home now, Zara said, her voice stronger than she felt. I'm filing for divorce on grounds of cruelty. The papers are already in Austin. Samuel laughed, an ugly sound. Divorce? No judge will grant it. Not without witnesses to my supposed cruelty. I'm a witness, Roy said, stepping onto the porch beside Zara. I found her half dead by Willow Creek, beaten so badly she could barely walk. And who the hell are you? Samuel demanded. Roy Vance. This is my ranch you're trespassing on. Samuel's eyes narrowed. So you're the one who stole my wife. $500 doesn't seem enough for a wife-stealing cur like you. He reached for his gun. I wouldn't. Harold's voice rang out as he appeared in the doorway, shotgun raised. There's 3 guns pointed at you, Baldwin. Odds aren't in your favor. Samuel hesitated, glancing at his men. There's 5 of us and 3 of you. One of them a woman. I like those odds just fine. Then you can't count. Came a new voice from the road. Marshal Morgan rode into view with 2 deputies. That's 6 against 5, by my calculation. And we're federal marshals. Relief washed over Zara as the marshal dismounted and approached. Baldwin, I presume. Samuel straightened in his saddle. These people have stolen my wife. I'm within my rights to reclaim her. Is that so? The marshal looked to Zara. Mrs. Baldwin, do you wish to return with your husband? No, Zara said firmly. He beat me for years because I couldn't bear children. When he'd had enough, he cast me out, left me to die. I want a divorce. Lying whore. Samuel spat. She's barren and deceitful. No court will take her word over mine. They'll take mine, Roy said quietly. And the doctor in Cooper's Creek who treated her injuries. And anyone with eyes who can see the fear on her face when you speak. The marshal sighed heavily. Baldwin, here's how this is going to go. You and your men are going to turn around and ride back to Tascosa. Mrs. Baldwin has filed legal papers for divorce. You'll be notified when to appear in court. And if I refuse, Samuel challenged, then I'll arrest you for threatening these people on their own property. The marshal said simply, your choice. For a long moment, Samuel sat rigid with fury. Finally, he pointed a finger at Zara. This isn't over. No woman makes a fool of Samuel Baldwin and gets away with it. She's not making a fool of you, Roy said evenly. You've done that all on your own. With a final venomous glare, Samuel wheeled his horse around. Come on, boys. We'll settle this another day. As they rode away, Zara's knees finally gave out. Roy caught her before she could fall, holding her close as she trembled with relief and lingering fear. It's over, he murmured into her hair. You're safe now. but they all knew it wasn't truly over. Samuel Baldwin wasn't a man to admit defeat easily. The marshal approached, expression grave. He'll be back. Men like that always are. We'll be ready, Roy said, his arm still around Zara's waist. Maybe. The marshal eyed them thoughtfully. Or maybe there's another solution. He reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a folded document. These came through from Austin yesterday. I was bringing them here when I got your signal. Zara took the papers with trembling hands. What is this? Divorce papers, the marshal explained. Already approved by Judge Harmon in Austin. Seems your case was expedited. Roy looked stunned. That's impossible. Divorces take months, sometimes years. The marshal shrugged. Let's just say Judge Harmon owes me a favor. And when I explained the situation, he trailed off meaningfully. I don't understand, Zara said, staring at the papers. How can I be granted a divorce without a hearing? The judge reviewed statements from Dr. Miller in Cooper's Creek about your injuries, as well as Mr. Vance's written account of finding you. The marshal's expression softened. And it seems Baldwin has something of a reputation. You weren't his first wife, Mrs. Baldwin. Just the one who survived the longest. The revelation left Zara speechless. Had there been others before her? Women who had suffered as she had, perhaps worse? According to these papers, the marshal continued, you're a free woman. Baldwin has no legal claim on you whatsoever. Free. The word echoed in Zara's mind like a prayer. Free from Samuel, free from fear, free to begin again. What about Baldwin's threats? Harold asked practically. Papers won't stop bullets. No, the marshal agreed, but this might. He produced another document. Restraining order. Baldwin comes within 100 yards of Mrs. Baldwin. He'll face federal charges. Will that stop him? Zara asked skeptically. Maybe not, the marshal admitted. But it gives us legal grounds to arrest him if he tries anything. And between you and me, Mrs. Baldwin, I'll be keeping a close eye on him. After the marshal and his deputies departed, promising to check in regularly, Zara sat at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers. Her maiden name, Zara Bennett, stared back at her from the document, a name she hadn't used in 15 years. You all right? Roy asked softly, sitting beside her. I don't know, she answered honestly. I've been Zara Baldwin for so long. I'm not sure I remember how to be anyone else. You can be whoever you want now, Roy reminded her. That's what freedom means. Zara looked up at him. This man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved. And what if I want to be Zara Vance someday? The words slipped out before she could stop them, and Zara immediately flushed with embarrassment. I'm sorry, that was forward of me. But Roy was smiling, that slow, warm smile that made her heart flutter. Zara Vance, he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. I think that has a mighty fine ring to it. Harold, who had been pretending not to listen from his chair by the fire, suddenly developed a coughing fit. Pa, maybe you should get some fresh air, Roy suggested without taking his eyes off Zara. Think I will at that, Harold agreed, rising with a knowing smile. Got some, fence checking to do. When they were alone, Roy took Zara's hands in his. I know it's too soon. You've been through hell, and you're just now getting your freedom back. The last thing you need is another man making claims on your life. You're nothing like Samuel, Zara said softly. Even so. Roy squeezed her hands gently. I want you to have time. To heal, to find yourself again. And if, when you've done that, you still feel the same way, well, I'm not going anywhere. Tears welled in Zara's eyes. But for once, they were tears of joy rather than sorrow. I don't deserve you, Roy Vance. Now that's where you're wrong, Roy said firmly. You deserve every happiness this world has to offer. And if I'm lucky enough to be part of that happiness someday, I'll consider myself the most fortunate man alive. He leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and kissed her not like the earlier kiss that had been born of urgency and fear, but tender and full of promise. A beginning rather than an ending. When they parted, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Pure, uncomplicated hope for a future that could be bright and filled with love. What happens now? She asked. Roy smiled. Now? Now we take each day as it comes. Together. Over the following months, life at the Vance Ranch settled into a new rhythm. Zara's nightmares gradually became less frequent, though Samuel's face still haunted her dreams occasionally. The bruises faded completely, leaving only the faintest scars as reminders of her past life. Roy courted her properly, with Harold's enthusiastic blessing. They took long rides across the ranch, picnicked by the pond, and attended socials in Cooper's Creek where Roy proudly introduced Zara to friends and neighbors. At first, Zara was nervous about how she would be received. A divorced woman was still viewed with suspicion in many circles, but the community largely accepted her, especially after word spread of her ordeal. Marshall Morgan kept his promise, checking in regularly and reporting that Samuel had been unusually quiet in Tascosa. Too quiet, he admitted during one visit. Makes me wonder what he's planning. You think he's still a threat? Zara asked, the familiar fear creeping back. A man like that doesn't let go easily, the marshal said grimly. Just stay vigilant. Despite these concerns, life was sweeter than Zara had ever imagined possible. She and Roy grew closer each day, their love deepening from initial attraction to something profound and unshakable. Harold became the father she had lost too young, teaching her to play chess and telling increasingly embarrassing stories about Roy's childhood that made her laugh until her sides ached. As autumn painted the Texas plains in gold and russet, Roy took Zara to their special spot by the pond. The cottonwood trees had dropped most of their leaves, creating a golden carpet underfoot. It's beautiful here in every season, Zara observed, wrapping her shawl tighter against the crisp breeze. Not as beautiful as you, Roy said, taking her hand. Zara, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Mine too, she said softly. Roy took a deep breath. I promised I'd give you time, and I meant it. If you need more, just say the word. But I can't go another day without asking you properly. He dropped to one knee, producing a small velvet box from his pocket. Zara Bennett, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Inside the box was a modest diamond ring with small sapphires on either side. It was my mother's, Roy explained. Pa gave it to me last week. Said she would have wanted you to have it. Tears of joy spilled down Zara's cheeks as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you, Roy Vance. Roy slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into an embrace that felt like coming home. I promise you, Zara, I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret this decision. I know, she said simply, because she did know. Roy had shown her with every word and action what kind of man he was: honorable, kind, and steadfast. They planned a small wedding for the spring, when the wildflowers would carpet the plains in blue and yellow. Harold insisted on inviting half of Cooper's Creek, proudly telling anyone who would listen that his son had finally found the perfect woman. As Christmas approached, the ranch was transformed with pine boughs and candles, the scent of Zara's baking filling the house. It would be her first real Christmas in years. Samuel had never allowed what he considered frivolous celebrations. On Christmas Eve, as they sat by the fire after dinner, a knock at the door startled them all. Visitors were rare, especially in the evening. Harold opened the door cautiously, then relaxed. Marshall, coming out of the cold. Marshall Morgan entered, removing his hat and nodding to Zara and Roy. Sorry to intrude on your Christmas festivities. Not at all, Zara assured him, though she felt a flicker of concern. Is everything all right? The marshal's expression was solemn. I came to tell you personally rather than let you hear it as gossip. Samuel Baldwin is dead. Zara sank into her chair, shock washing over her. Dead? How? Shot in a gambling dispute 3 nights ago in Tascosa. Man claimed Baldwin cheated him at cards. The marshal shook his head. From what witnesses say, Baldwin did cheat, then pulled a gun when he was caught. Other fellow was faster. A complex mixture of emotions swept through Zara: relief, lingering fear as if this might be a trick, and a strange, unexpected grief for the young man she had once believed she loved. Are you certain it was him? Roy asked, voicing Zara's unspoken fear. Positive, the marshal confirmed. I viewed the body myself before they buried him. It was Baldwin, all right. Roy moved to Zara's side, taking her hand. Are you all right? She nodded slowly. I think so. It's just strange to know he's gone. She looked up at the marshal. Thank you for coming to tell me yourself. Seemed like the right thing to do, he replied. Figured you deserved to know you're truly free now. No more looking over your shoulder. After the marshal departed, declining their invitation to stay for dinner, Zara stood by the window, watching snow begin to fall, a rare treat in this part of Texas. Roy joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Penny for your thoughts?" "I'm not sure they're worth that much," Zara admitted. "I feel relieved mostly, and guilty for feeling relieved." "That's natural," Roy assured her. "He caused you great harm. No one would expect you to mourn him." "But I do in a way," Zara said softly. "Not for the man he became, but for the man I thought he was when I married him. For all the years wasted. For the children we never had." Roy turned her gently to face him. "The years weren't wasted, Zara. They shaped you into the incredible woman you are now. Strong, compassionate, brave." Zara looked up at him. This man who had taught her what love truly meant. "How do you always know exactly what to say?" "Just speaking the truth as I see it," Roy smiled. "Now, no more dwelling on the past. We have a future to plan. Our future." As they rejoined Harold by the fire, Zara felt the last shadow lift from her heart. Samuel Baldwin was gone, and with him, the fear that had been her constant companion for so long. Spring came early to Texas in 1877, painting the plains in vibrant wildflowers as if nature itself were celebrating new beginnings. On a perfect April morning, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of bluebonnets and Indian paintbrush, Zara Bennett stood in the bedroom that had become hers, wearing a simple white dress that Eleanor had helped her make. "You look beautiful," Harold said from the doorway, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Absolutely beautiful." Zara smoothed the dress nervously. "Do you think Roy will like it?" Harold chuckled. "My dear, Roy would think you beautiful in a potato sack. But yes, he'll be struck speechless when he sees you." The wedding was being held under the cottonwood trees by the pond, Zara and Roy's special place. Most of Cooper's Creek had turned out for the occasion, along with neighbors from surrounding ranches. Even Marshall Morgan had ridden in from his current posting in San Antonio. "Ready?" Harold offered his arm. Zara took it gratefully. More than ready. They rode to the pond in a wagon decorated with wildflowers, Eleanor and her husband following behind. When they arrived, Zara saw the gathering of people and, standing beneath an arch of spring blossoms, Roy in his best suit, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him. Harold helped her down and led her through the crowd to where Roy waited with the minister from Cooper's Creek. As she approached, Roy's expression of wonder and love nearly took her breath away. "You're beautiful," he whispered as she reached him. "So are you," she whispered back, making him grin. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to honor, cherish, and protect each other for all their days. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Roy kissed her with such tenderness that Zara felt her heart might burst with happiness. The celebration afterward was joyous music and dancing, food and laughter. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the land, Roy led Zara away from the crowd to a quiet spot by the water's edge. "Happy, Mrs. Vance?" he asked, his arms around her waist. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," she answered truthfully. Roy's expression grew serious. "Zara, there's something I need to tell you. I've been waiting for the right time." Concern flickered through her. "What is it?" "I received a letter from Dr. Miller last week. He consulted with a specialist in Austin about your situation." Zara tensed. They had discussed children, agreeing that if they were blessed with them, wonderful, but if not, they would be content with each other. "What did the specialist say?" she asked carefully. Roy's face broke into a smile. "He said there's no reason to believe you can't have children. Your injuries from Baldwin's beatings have healed well, and the specialist believes your inability to conceive was likely due to Samuel's issues, not yours." Zara stared at him in disbelief. "Are you saying I'm not barren?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Roy confirmed, his eyes shining with hope. "The doctor believes we have every chance of having children of our own someday." Joy unlike anything Zara had ever known washed over her. The possibility of children, a family with Roy, was more than she had dared to hope for. "Of course," Roy continued, "if it doesn't happen, that won't make our life together any less perfect. You're all I need to be happy, Zara." Tears of happiness spilled down her cheeks as she kissed her husband. "I love you, Roy Vance." "And I love you, Zara Vance," he replied, wiping her tears gently with his thumb. More than words can say. As twilight deepened around them, they returned to their celebration, surrounded by friends who had become family, looking forward to a future bright with promise and love. 1 year later, on a warm spring morning, Zara Vance gave birth to a healthy baby boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's auburn hair. They named him Harold Samuel Vance Harold after his proud grandfather who wept unashamedly when he held his namesake, and Samuel not after Zara's first husband, but after Roy's grandfather who had built the ranch from nothing. "He's perfect," Roy whispered as he sat beside Zara on their bed, gazing in wonder at their son. "He is," Zara agreed, exhausted but radiantly happy. As she looked around the bedroom that had once been her sanctuary and was now filled with the soft sounds of her newborn son, Zara thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the beaten, discarded woman by the creek to beloved wife, mother, and heart of the Vance Ranch. "What are you thinking?" Roy asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "I'm thinking about worth," Zara said softly. "About a man who told me I was worthless, and another man who said I was worth more than that." She looked up at her husband with love. "You were right." "I usually am," Roy teased, then grew serious. "You're worth everything, Zara. Everything and more." As they sat together in the golden light of morning, their son sleeping peacefully in Zara's arms, and their future stretching bright before them, Zara knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home not in a place, but in the hearts of those who loved her. And that, she realized, was worth more than anything in the world.